Hey everybody, what's happening? It is Brent Axe, and we are live here on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page. Coming off the heels of a Syracuse football loss. What a game, what a strange game, and so much to talk about following Syracuse's 27-20 loss to Pittsburgh at the Carrier Dome. The Orange fall to 3-4 on the 2019 season, which is taking a very interesting twist and turn as Syracuse goes into the second half of the season following a 10-3 year a year ago. Expectations through the roof. Well, this season has taken on an entirely different tenor. We saw backup quarterbacks in the game we never thought we'd see otherwise for injury, which was part of the conversation. But you have a quarterback, if you want to call it a controversy, at the very least a quarterback discussion in Syracuse. You have a losing record again. You have what could be an all-time bad offensive line with this football team. You have ACC officials stealing an opportunity away from Syracuse to at least put the fate of the game in their own hands, not even following their own rules. There's officially too much to go through in this game, so let's jump right in. You guys get in the comments, do your thing, because there's a lot to digest here after this football game. We're here thanks to our friends at Krause Health. We also put this on YouTube. If you're watching later on YouTube, we appreciate that. If you can't be with us here live after Syracuse football games, but we are here live, just so you know, after every game, right after Dino Babers' press conference on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page. Okay, where to start? Well, Clayton Welch comes in for Tommy DeVito in the second half of this football game. What we are seeing is an all-time bad Syracuse offensive line. And I hate to pick on these kids, but it is what it is, as the expression goes. As David Hale noted here from ESPN.com, and I want to bring up the stat here. This is incredible to think about at this point. So Syracuse allows 8 sacks against Clemson. They allow 8 sacks against NC State, end up giving up 9 sacks, to Pittsburgh. Seemed like a heck of a lot more than that, didn't it? 9 sacks, but the quarterbacks got hit all night, be it Tommy DeVito or Clayton Welch at this point. You have to go back to 2004 and start the stat there. Only only SMU in 2014 has allowed 8 sacks in 3 straight games against Power 5 opponents. Syracuse a year ago was 13th in the ACC in allowing sacks. All of last year, Syracuse allowed 37 sacks. They've allowed 35 sacks, more than now, halfway, just past the halfway point of the 2019 season. So this offensive line is all-time bad. I don't think I've seen an offensive line this bad, certainly since the Greg Robinson years, but I have not seen a Syracuse offensive line this bad. If it's Tommy DeVito, if it's Clayton Welch, if it's you guys out there on the field, that quarterback is getting pounded throughout the game. DeVito left the game not only for ineffectiveness, but took a real shot from Paris Ford, Pitt's really good safety. I think this kid's going to play in the NFL someday. He was out of the first half of the game because he had a targeting call in Pitt's last game against Duke, but he comes back in that third quarter, delivered what ultimately was the punishing shot to Tommy DeVito to knock him out of the game. But Clayton Welch came in, tossed a 94-yard touchdown to Taj Harris, got rid of the ball quickly, certainly is apt to run the football. He's a bigger player than Tommy DeVito. And now the question is it a case of, look, I've seen this before, and I think you've seen this before. A backup quarterback comes in. Pittsburgh did no prep on this kid, didn't even think he'd get in the football game, and he took advantage of the situation. He took advantage of some plays. Pitt certainly didn't think he was going to run. He got rid of the ball quickly. He took his fair share of shots and hits in this game, don't get me wrong. But now you got Florida State that's got a lot of tape and a lot of speed on defense, and Clayton Welch is not going to take them by surprise. I think Clayton Welch's short-term passing game and the short passing game was questionable at best, but he threw a 94-yard play to Taj Harris. He had a great throw to Aaron Hackett. Certainly showed he's apt to run the football, and he was fired up. I think he was doing some things that were missing from the Syracuse offense, but this offensive line is really bad. It's really bad, and that includes a transfer that they brought in. You say, okay, you're losing some players. Let's bring in a transfer and see if he can stabilize things on the line. Ryan Alexander is just not doing it. He commits a lot of penalties. He lets players go right by. There was one play where Carlos Vettorello was literally dragged into the backfield with his defender. You're talking about a redshirt freshman there. You're talking about a young player, and he won the job. But as Dino Babers just said at the press conference, here, I'll pull up the quote. I tweeted it out. Hope you guys can follow on Brent Axe Media. Here's what he said at the press conference. Many of you probably just watched it here. Right now, everybody's job is in jeopardy. We need to go back and watch the tape. It's not fair to keep playing the same guys if the result doesn't change. Well, the guys that you've had out there up to this point were supposedly your best players. If Clayton Welch was that good, then how come he didn't beat out Tommy DeVito beforehand? Was it just stubbornness on the coach's part? They wanted to ride out the quarterback who was the anointed one and the guy that they groomed for 2 years to take the job, and you can't really blame him for that. If Welch was that good, he would have beaten out DeVito. You play the best guys, right? So I'm as curious as anybody to see where this Clayton Welch thing goes. But for this game, as weird as it was, as many penalties as Syracuse committed, as bad as the offensive line was, Pittsburgh certainly helped Syracuse's cause. 4th and 25, and you give Syracuse a first down. I mean, this was just a dumb football game. It really was. It was a dumb game. And yet again, on primetime ESPN, Syracuse doesn't exactly put the most entertaining product out there. They lost to Clemson. Pardon me, I got a bit of a cold. They lost to Clemson 41-6 on ABC. They lost to NC State, of course, last Thursday on ESPN. And ESPN's audience gets to see Syracuse go out there tonight and not exactly light the world on fire. But they have a chance late in the game, and there's a fumble by Pittsburgh's A.J. Davis. They go to replay to see if, in fact, the ball came out before his knee went down. By rule, what the rule states is that you need indisputable video evidence to overturn the call. The officials do not have extra replays. They watch the same replay that you and I are watching on ESPN in real time. By those replays, there was absolutely no way you could say there was indisputable video evidence to overturn the call. Yet ACC officials who are trash, ACC officials are, I can't even put into words how bad they are. And that's not just based on Syracuse games. I've watched a number of ACC football games this year, and they have made calls that blow my mind. Officiating is just one of those discussions that's not going away. If you watch Monday Night Football this week, the Lions absolutely got screwed by the officials. And here in this game as well, Syracuse was at least denied an opportunity for the players to decide the game on the field. By rule, it says indisputable video evidence. No way was that indisputable video evidence. And if Syracuse ends up getting the ball back and losing, fine. But it is driving me crazy how much officials are deciding games that they should not, and they're deciding games based on calls that are flat wrong. This is inexcusable. It's happening in too many places in the game of football, and it's driving me crazy, and I'm sure it's driving you crazy as a viewer. So as bad as that game was, Syracuse has a chance to at least drive down the field and tie the game. Same thing as last week. As bad as that game was on offense, they had the ball with a chance to win or tie the football game. That was just execution last week. They just couldn't get down the field, right? That was kind of an offensive issue. Second half defense was great for Syracuse up until Pitt's last drive. They had held Pitt to 57 yards. But this comes down to this offensive line is so bad that Syracuse's offense just can't function right now, which, of course, leaves a complete lack of a running game. One of the most surprising stats in this game was Pitt rushes for 145 yards on 43 carries, 3.4 yards per carry, because Pitt had not been running the football this year. They had been passing the ball a bunch today, and on that end today, 232 yards, 18 of 33 for Kenny Pickett, a pretty decent day for him. They run 76 plays for 377 yards overall. Syracuse 78 plays for 328 yards. Offensive line or not, Syracuse has virtually no running game at this point. Today, 34 attempts, 51 yards. That's 1.5 yards per carry. You have three good running backs on this team that have been rendered useless by this coaching staff. They have got to figure out a way to get the ball in Mo Neal's hands, to get the ball in Jarvian Howard's hands, get the ball in Abdul Adams' hands, and use them one way or the other. We saw Aaron Hackett be used in the second half of this game, but why wait till the second half of this game? You need bubble screens, you need short passes, you need to almost build in plays, knowing your offensive line is inept. And if it's rollout plays, throws on the run, whatever the case may be, you not only have to anticipate what an opposing defense is going to do if you're Syracuse, you have to anticipate how bad your offensive line is going to be. And even if Sam Heckel was available and healthy, I mean, it certainly would improve things and put some players in the right position, but it's not the magic potion that most people would look for. And by the way, Sam Heckel, I don't want to say anything declarative here because you always leave a window open, but I am about 90% sure we're not going to see him on the football field again this year. He's got concussion issues, and I just don't think we're going to see him again this season. He's not even close to getting back on the field at this point. I find it difficult that he'll be back on the field at all. So now Syracuse is 3-4. I'm glad you brought this up. My guy, Ben, I see this in the comments right now. Syracuse radio guy, Brian Higgins, and I put this on my Twitter feed as well, said this. He said he saw a different non-TV angle of that fumble that we mentioned, and that the ball was coming out before Davis's knee hit the ground. Should have been a fumble. So in the world of shoulda, woulda, coulda, he saw an angle we didn't see. And that's the thing I was wondering. Did the officials have a replay that we didn't see? But as far as I know, and I checked with Adam Zucker, I was doing an exchange on Twitter with, who's with CBS Sports. Mike Tirico, I mean, Mike Tirico's an SU alum. He's biased in this case, but he tweeted indisputable video evidence, but these guys would know. And the answer is, and I checked with a few other people, they say the same replays we do. It's based on what the TV crew is, and this is an ESPN camera crew, so you would think they'd have good enough replays for the officials to see it, and they didn't see it. They did not have indisputable video evidence, and now based on what Brian is saying, and, you know, Brian might be biased in a sense. I know Brian well. I work with him at ESPN Radio. He's a great dude, and he wouldn't put anything out there that just to stir anything up there, and he's coming from a Syracuse perspective, working on the Syracuse radio broadcast, but he's putting it out there because it's out there. He's putting it out there because the refs blew that one. So what a weird game. But now, bottom line, Syracuse is 3-4 and has to rescue this season. No way it matches the high expectations that were set on it beforehand. Now you're just trying to salvage a bowl bid, which at this point even looks very difficult to do. The ACC is a wide open league. There are 5 games to go. You're 7 in the hole, 5 to go. Florida State has not been the mighty Florida State that we know, but they've got a terrific running back in Cam Akers and a lot of speed everywhere that's going to get to the Syracuse quarterback, as every team at this point seemingly will do. Then you face Boston College at home, who's got A.J. Dillon, one of the best players in the country. There's a bye week built in there, and Syracuse is really going to need that one because they're a banged-up football team. True, Williams got hurt in this game, a couple other injuries. In this game, Andre Cisco, pardon me, Andre Cisco did come back in this game, and Ife Melifonwu came back, so that's good news on the injury front. But Syracuse is going to need that bye week, and then you got Duke, Louisville, Wake Forest down the stretch, and 2 of those 3 down the stretch are on the road before you finish at home against Wake Forest. Okay, let's see what you guys are saying here in the comments. Christopher saying, any more on the coaches yelling at the fans? I guess this year is off the rails. Yeah, there was Mark Larson from Spectrum News tweeted that, Chris, about I forget the gentleman's name. He's the trainer for the Orange. His name will pop in my head here. Sure, he always puts the message on his hands. You know, always has that painted on there. He was going at it with the fans. Other coaches were going at it with the fans. So that's getting ugly. We saw the Taj Harris blow up last week on the sideline at NC State. Now, he had that big touchdown throw from Clayton Welch, and they weren't making a strong effort to get him the football. So, but there's a lot of things that are leaking out now. When you're losing and frustration is boiling over, far from the Ohana La Familia feel that this team had a year ago. But as Dino just said at the press conference, for what it's worth, that they're going to try and solve these issues as a family in that sense. What a difference one play can make. First play of the game. I just thought of this talking about Taj Harris. If Tristan Jackson catches that, I think it was the first play, if not one of the first plays from scrimmage, and Syracuse clearly came out slinging. They did not run the ball at all, even on the first possession of the game when DeVito was in at quarterback. Tristan Jackson had a touchdown. How could this game have changed? I think the offensive line would still have its issues, and some of the things we saw come to fruition still come to fruition. Jackson catches that ball, runs in for a touchdown. He blew 2 scoring plays in the first half, as a matter of fact. How does that change the tenor of this game? Maybe not at all. Maybe based on what we saw over 4 quarters, that's the story of these 2 teams. But don't tell me plays in the first quarter don't matter. Syracuse needed to start hot. Paris Ford was off the field at that point for Pittsburgh. Tristan Jackson scores on that play. Who knows? Who knows, right? But that's football for you. It's a game of inches. It's a fourth quarter game, but sometimes those early plays can count. Kyle saying, why can't Syracuse recruit a dual threat quarterback? It's interesting you bring that up because they had one on the roster, Chance Amy. I think you would certainly consider a dual threat quarterback in that sense, and he transferred. I don't know why he transferred. He might be beating himself up for that. I don't know if there was academic issues and something beyond football there. I don't want to speak on that because I'm not fully aware of his reasons for transferring, but they did have one. They did recruit that. Antonio says, what was the coaching staff looking like in the offseason? It seemed like all the energy that Dino brought, the orange is the new fast, no huddle, hurry up offense, clever play action plays. It's all gone. Yeah, it is all gone. And a lot of that's on the offensive line, but not all of it's on the offensive line. I think you got to start to question what Mike Cavanaugh's doing, the offensive line coach. I mean, he's a pretty reputable guy and is a respected coach in the field, but this offensive line is just awful. They're getting blown off. They're missing assignments, all the procedural penalties, and that's right on coaching. You can put that on Baber's doorstep. You can put that on Cavanaugh's doorstep. You can put that on Mike Lynch's doorstep. You are 7 games into the season, and you're committing penalties like it's day one. Procedure penalties, false starts. You know, I talked about how bad the ACC refs were, but, you know, Syracuse shot off plenty of its toes, certainly, before they got kind of screwed on that replay thing. But you got to start to question coaching on that. Why is this team committing so many what you would deem avoidable penalties? You can't blame the refs for all of that. As Ben notes, our Syracuse Orange football comment here, Syracuse is still working on some players, but no quarterbacks have committed for 2020 yet. Christian Valou is a big quarterback they're trying to track down for the future. He's made recent visits here. There's a couple other guys on their radar, but it's currently, you know, DeVito, and who knows how long he is out based on ineffectiveness and injury. Clayton Welch certainly will play next week, it seems. Rex Culpepper got in for a game, or for a play in this game, pardon me, because Welch had to leave the field because his helmet came off. David Summers is a freshman who was nowhere near ready to take the field. So the ever-evolving quarterback game here. And if DeVito's time is over, what a fall from grace this is. You had a guy who sat behind Dungy for 2 years, Elite 11 quarterback, 4-star prospect. Don Brasco High School in New Jersey. I just think of the movie, Donnie Brasco, right? New Jersey. I can say that because my mom's an Italian from Jersey, right? So he's 4-star guy, Elite 11, groomed for the job, got experience, looked the part. Tommy DeVito looked the part, played the part, won some games for Syracuse, comes in, and boy, that before he got replaced by Clayton Welch. So coming in, he had been sacked 26 times, and I think he got sacked 7 times before he left. So here's a guy who's been sacked 33 times. Syracuse had 37 sacks allowed all of last year. So DeVito was put in a bad situation with this offensive line, but there's certainly some things you can put on him in terms of decision-making, getting rid of the football, locking in on receivers, habits showing up. Eric Dungy had a better offensive line to work with, but what Eric Dungy was so good at was not only hiding any flaws in his offensive line, taking off quicker, he was unpredictable. When the play broke down, where he would go. When the play breaks down under DeVito, you pretty much know where he's going to go and what he's going to do. But I can't say it enough, and I don't want it to sound like an excuse, but you're not going to do anything on offense when you have an offensive line that can't even function. I mean, they're well below that. This offensive line is in crisis. It is awful. It is absolutely one of the worst lines left to right that I have ever seen in Syracuse, New York, by far. And again, I'm not trying to, I'm just calling it like I see it. I think you're calling it like you see it. The numbers back us up there. How can this offensive line be that bad? And they go out and they get a transfer. And Alexander, as we mentioned, and he certainly has not lived up to the billing and is just not able to play at this level. He is not an ACC caliber right tackle at this point. It's looking like Carlos Federello does not fit the bill there as well. He was kind of thrown into the fire and, to say the least, is not passing the test. Lee asks, how does SU look on the offensive line for its incoming class? As noted, thank you for answering that, Ben. That's a question that's been asked before here in the chat. They have 1 offensive tackle committed. Now, it's early in the cycle. It's October. There's the early signing period coming up. You can do the early signing period in December and then the one that follows in February, but they're going to have to hustle on that. And even so, now you're bringing in freshmen. You're going to hit that at the transfer market again. What you want is an offensive line that's cohesive, that's played together from left to right tackle as much as you can, as they did last year. This is going to be a patchwork offensive line for the foreseeable future, and that's not good news for Syracuse. Christopher asked if Babers goes 3-9, is he on the hot seat? I don't think so. I don't think he's on the hot seat, even if they lose out. I mean, people won't be happy, certainly, but he just signed a long-term extension here, and they're not going to buy him out after one bad season following a 10-3 year. Dino bought himself some time to invest in this thing, fix this thing, and that contract alone does not put him on the hot seat. Now, you do 2 or 3 years in a row of this, it's time for buyout money. And I don't know what the contract says. I don't know what the buyout clause was. Remember, Dino was a coach that people were pursuing, that was rumored to go to other jobs. So I guess the good news in Syracuse struggling this year is that those rumors are all but gone at this point. Let's see. Rob saying somehow with a terrible offensive line situation, they've had chances to force overtime or win in the last 2 weeks. What does Dino like to say? Have faith, belief without evidence. 10-3 was great evidence. I'm not big on moral victories, but is the grit and toughness we're seeing late in these games enough evidence for us to believe in the culture that Dino wishes to build here? That is a great question, Rob. It went from close your eyes and imagine, belief without evidence. The evidence starts to show up. The win over Virginia Tech, the win over Clemson, the win over Florida State, last year's season start to finish, Camping World Bowl victory, back in the polls. It seemed like that evidence was there. 7 games into the season, that's all evaporated. And we're pretty much back to stage one. Got to have faith again. It's incredible to think about. Rory saying excuse my coughing here, guys. Still fighting off this cold. Put Elmore at center. Chris Elmore could play quarterback at this point. That kid's doing everything out there. One of the few bright spots on this team at this point. Lawrence brings up the penalties. I can't comprehend all the penalties they're getting. 12 a week ago, out of a bye week, by the way. And then this week they had 9 penalties, and it felt like a heck of a lot more. And they even got some penalties from Pittsburgh to help along the way, get them the ball in the fourth quarter. But we brought it up, and it's all set. There was Taj Harris had a pass interference, and there was a couple things outside of it. But it is pretty much that offensive line that keeps shooting itself in the foot with all of these penalties. It's ridiculous. Well, I think we're going to end it right there. As you can tell, my voice is going south here. So thank you, Rob. I'll try and get better here. Got this lingering cold that won't go away. Excuse me again. But we'll get better by next week. And that's when we'll join you again here live and back on a Saturday. Boy, we've had all these Saturdays free during Syracuse football season. It's been weird. Bye week, Thursday night, Friday night game. But we'll be back on a Saturday next week after the Orange take on Florida State. Thanks to Krause Hell. Thanks to you for hanging here on this Friday night. Hope you guys have a terrific weekend. We'll sort this all out. Please check out my recap on syracuse.com. All of our great coverage from Stephen Bailey and Nate Mink and our photographer, Dennis Nett and Chris Carlson and the whole crew throughout the weekend. And we will join you again here on Facebook Live next week after the Orange take on the Seminoles. Thanks for hanging with us tonight.